Welcome to Learn JavaScript Conditional Statements. In life, we make decisions based on circumstances. If we are tired, we go to bed, otherwise we wake up and start our day. These if-else decisions can be modeled in code by creating conditional statements. The conditional statements checks specific conditions and performs a task based on the conditions. In this lesson, we will explore how programs make decisions based on evaluating conditions and introduce logic into our code. We'll be covering the following concepts: if, else if, and else statements, comparison operators, logical operators, true and false values, ternary operators, and the last one is switch statement. First of all, the if keyword. We often perform a task based on a condition. For example, if the weather is nice today, then we go to outside. If the alarm clock rings, then we'll shut it off. If we are tired, then we'll go to sleep. In programming, we can also perform a task based on a condition using an if statements. Let's go to the code and inside the script tag write a condition with if. If parentheses true inside curly brackets console.log, this will be printed. Save the file, refresh the page, and you see, because the condition is true, the statement between curly braces will be printed at the console. That's the first condition you created in JavaScript. Notice, in this example, we'll have an if statement. The if statement is composed of the if keyword, you see, followed by a set of parentheses, you see, these parentheses, which is followed by a code block, and this is code block. Or block statement indicated by a set of curly braces. Inside the parentheses, here, a condition is provided that evaluates to true or false. Here the condition is true, so if the condition evaluates to true, the code inside the curly braces executes. If the condition is false, the block won't execute. Here, let's change true to false and see whether if this command execute or not. Refresh the page, you see nothing will appear at the console. It means that this code will not execute because in the if condition, the evaluating expression is false. Exercise. Use the let keyword to declare a variable named cell, then assign the value true to it. Let's do the first part of exercise. Get rid of the if code and with let set cell to true. For part 2, now create an if statement. Provide the if statement a condition of cell. Inside the code block of the if statement, console.log the string time to buy. Great. Define a if, create a parentheses. Inside the parentheses, put cell variable, then create a curly braces and console.log time to buy. Great. Let's save the file, check the result. You see time to buy will be printed at the console. So the cell value is true, and here inside the if condition, the cell will be evaluated to true when the code inside the curly braces after if will be executed. The part 3 of this exercise is below the cell variable declaration, but before the if statement, reassign cell to false. Run the code and observe what happens. Right after declaration and before if condition, I set the cell to false and check the result. You see, nothing will be happier in the output because cell in the if condition evaluated to false, then nothing inside the if block will be executed. In previous exercise, we used an if statement that checked the condition to decide whether or not to run a block of code. In many cases, we'll have code we want to run if our condition evaluates to false. If we wanted to add some default behavior to the if statement, we can add an else statement to run a block of code when the condition evaluates to false. Let's create an if-else statement. Let's just get rid of this code. And here I create a condition with if and else, but this one I want to run the else part. So I set false inside the if condition, console.log. For sure, this code will not run because it's evaluated to false, but the else will be run. Let's check the result. You see the code will run. So the else part executed because the if statement evaluated to false. If it evaluates to true, the else part will not run. Check the result. You see the if part runs and the else part doesn't run. An else statement must be paired with an if-else statement, and together they are referred to as a if-else statement. In the example above, the else statement uses the else keyword following the code block of an if statement. It has a code block that is wrapped by a curly braces. The code inside the else statement code block will execute when the if statement conditions evaluate to false. If-else statements allow us to automate solution to yes or no questions, also known as a binary decisions. Exercise. Add an else statement to an if statement, and inside the code block of else statement, console.log the string time to wait for a cell. Here, let's go back to previous exercise and add an else statement after the curly braces of if statement, and if it's not time to sell, it's time to wait. Let's refresh the page. You see it's time to wait because the if statement evaluated to false and the else statement executes. Comparison operators. When writing conditional statements, sometimes we need to use different types of operators to compare values. These operators are called comparison operators. Here is a list of some handy comparison operators and their syntax. For less than, use this one, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, is equal to, three equal next together, and is not equal to. Comparison operators compare the value on the left with the value on the right. For instance, here 10 is less than 12 evaluates to true. It can be helpful to think of comparison statements as questions. So, when the answer is yes, the statement evaluates to true, and when the answer is no, the statement evaluates to false. The above code will be asking, is 10 less than 12? Yes, so it evaluates to true. Exercise. Use let create a variable named hunger level and set it equal to 7. Get rid of the code. Use let hunger level and set it to 7. Write an if-else statement using a comparison operator. The condition should check if hunger level is greater than 7. If so, the conditional statement should log time to eat, otherwise it should log we can eat later. Use if and put hunger level there. If is greater than 7, console.log time to eat. Else console.log time to wait. What do you think about the result of this code? Does this part run or this part, the else part? Let's refresh the code. You see, the result is time to wait. Why this happens? Because the hunger level in the condition evaluated compared to 7, and it's gonna be greater than 7 to run the if part. And because it's not greater than 7 and it is exactly the 7, the else part will run. If we change the greater than to greater than or equal to, the if part will run because 7 equal to 7. You see, time to eat. Play with the number of hunger level and the comparison operators like this to check the result and find out how the comparison operators works with if condition. Logical operators. Working with conditions means that we will be using booleans, true or false values. In JavaScript, there are operators that works with boolean values known as logical operators. We can use logical operators to add some sophisticated logic to our conditions. There are 3 logical operators: the AND operators with these symbols, the OR operators with these symbols, and the NOT operators. When we use the AND operator, we are checking that 2 things are true. Here, let's check this code inside here. If stoplight equal to green and pedestrians is equal to 0, then go. Let's define stop light to green and pedestrian to 0, and check the result. You see, because both of these two statements evaluated to true, the if part will run. If one of them is not true, the else part will run, because the logical operator here is and it needs both part of right side and left side to be true. Let's change the pedestration to 1 and check what happened. You see, the stop part will run, because if one of them is false, the whole condition will be evaluated to false and the if part will not run. If we are only about either condition being true, we can use the OR operator. Let's change the AND operator and use OR operator and see what happens. If I refresh the page, you see the if block runs because we uses OR operator and this part evaluated to true and this part evaluated to false. Because it's an OR operator, the whole condition evaluated to true, then the if part runs. The NOT operator reverse or negates the value of a boolean. Here let's define excited to true and use if excited console.log I'm am excited. You see in the output, you see I'm excited. And the else part, I'm not excited. If I refresh the page, it's obviously the I'm excited will be logged in the console, but if I use the not operator before the excited variable, it will evaluate it to false, because excited is true and not true is false. Then the else condition will run, and if I refresh the page, I see the code inside the else block will run, and you see I'm not excited. Exercise: declare two variable mode and the tiredness level. Let's do that. Two variable mode to sleepy and tiredness level. Let's create an if statement that check if mode is sleepy and tiredness level is greater than 8. Use if mode equal to sleepy and tiredness level to 8, and the else part If both conditions evaluate to true, the console.log the string time to sleep. Otherwise, it should log not bedtime yet. So if it's true, console.log time to sleep, else console.log not bedtime yet. Let's check the result. You see, not bedtime yet, because this part is true, but this part is not false. Tiredness level is not 8, it's 5. Oops, we need to change the tiredness level greater than 8. See here, I changed the equal to greater than 8, but in both condition, the else part will run because tiredness level is 5, which is not greater than 8, and it evaluated to false, and because there is an and condition, the whole if part will not run when the else part run, and you see not bedtime yet. After you press run, after running the code, use or operator and not operator and see what happens if you negate the value of the entire statement. Here you see the whole statement evaluated to false, but if I use and put the whole statement inside parentheses, you see the whole statement is evaluated to false, and here I use and negate operator, and not false will be evaluated to true, and the code inside time to sleep will run. Let's check the result. You see time to sleep. So play with the logical and comparison operators inside this code to refresh your knowledge about if-else statement. Let's consider how non-Boolean data types like a string or numbers are evaluated when checked inside a condition. Sometimes you'll want to check if a variable exists, and you won't necessarily want it to equal a specific value. You'll only check to see if the variable has been assigned a value. Let's create a variable, my var, and set it to value, and inside the if condition just type my var and console.log the value of my var, else console.log the variable is not initialized. Let's refresh the page. You see the if block runs because my var has values. If we comment this part and don't set any value to my var and check the code, you see my variable is not initialized, will run. The code block in the if statement will run because my variable has a truthy value. Even though the value of my variable is not explicitly the value true, when used in a Boolean or conditional context, it evaluates to true because it has been assigned to a non-falsy value. Here, the value string is a non-falsy value. So which values are falsy or evaluate to false when checked as a condition? The list of falsy values includes 0, I mean if you set 0 here to my variable, this condition evaluate to false and the else part will run. Let's check the result. You see, let's convert it to else part to better understand the code. You see, if it's an empty string, if I set my value to empty string, also the else part will run. Null, if I set it to null, also the else part will run. And undefined, which is the default value for variable that don't initialize. And also none is the last item in the falsy values. The truthy and falsy evaluations open a world of shorthand possibilities. Say you have a website and want to take a username to make a personalized greeting. Sometimes the user does not have an account, making the username variable too falsy. Below, check if username is defined and assigned a default string if it's not. Let's check this code. Here I define default name. If username, let's define the username too and set the username to Bob. And at the end, console.log username, default username. Check this code and run. You see Bob at the output because username is Bob and it evaluates to true and username will be placed inside the default name and default name will be Bob. If I don't initialize the username, the default name will be a stranger. See, it's a stranger because username is undefined, so the if block will not run and the else block will get the stranger as a default name and the stranger will be printed at the output. If you combine your knowledge of logical operators, you can use a shorthand for the code above. In a Boolean condition, JavaScript assigns the truthy value to a variable if you use the OR operator in your assignment. Let's convert this whole code, comment it, and use this one. Username, or if username has nothing or is undefined, the value stranger will be evaluated and put inside the default name. Let's check the result. You see it's a stranger, and if I use Bob, it's Bob. So it's a shorthand for this if-else statement. This concept is also referred to as short-circuit evaluation. Exercise. Let's use short-circuit evaluation to assign a value to writing tools. Don't edit tool yet. We'll return to tool in the next step. Assign to writing tool the value of tool, and if tool is falsy, assign a default value of pen. Great. Let's get rid of this code and use let keyword writing tools and set it to pen. So don't set anything to it and just define it, and here before it let set tool, and writing tool will be tool, and if it's undefined with short circuit, the pen will be inside the writing tool. if I console.log writing tool, the result will be pen. I use template literal like this. The pen is mightier than the sword, which means that the value of writing tool is pen. What if we reassign the value of tool to marker? Let's check it to marker. What happened? If I refresh, the marker is mightier than the sword. If tool has value, the value of tool, which is marker, will be put inside the writing tool, and this part will not run. So you see marker in the output. In the spirit of using shorthand syntax, we can use a ternary operator to simplify an if-else statement. Take a look at the if-else statement in this example. If it's nighttime, true, turn on the lights, else turn off the lights. And with ternary operators to perform the same functionality, let's convert this code to ternary operators. Is nighttime, question mark. If it's true, the command will run and use colon and put the false command. So if it's nighttime true, this command will run, and if it's nighttime false, this one will run. Let's comment this code and check the result. You see turn on lights. If I set it to false, the is nighttime, you see turn off the time. So in this example, the condition is nighttime is provided before the question mark. Two expressions follows the question mark and are separated by a colon. If the condition evaluates to true, the first expression executes, and if the condition evaluates the false, the second expression executes. Refactor or edit the if-else block to use a ternary operator. Let's copy this code inside the code editor. And what we want to do is to convert this code to ternary operator. Its temperature is greater than 35, it's hot, else it's okay. First of all, comment this code, and here just check temp greater than 35, question mark, the first expression followed by colon, and the second expression is much shorter than the if-else statement. Check the result and you see it's hot because it's 40. Else if statements. We can add more conditions to our if-else with an else if statement. The else if statement allows us for more than two possible outcomes. You can add as many else if statements as you like to make more complex conditions. The else if statements always come after the if statement and before the else statement. Here, let's check this code. You see, if a stoplight is here, we define a stoplight to yellow. We use if statement and check stoplight is red, console.log stop. Here we use if else if statement, and it should be right after an if statement or an else if statement. And if this condition is false, this one will be evaluated. If this one is true, the code inside this block will run and none of them will evaluate. If this condition is false, the next else if will be evaluated. And if this one is false, the last else will be evaluated. So what happens if this code run? Because a stop log is yellow and this code will be run. Let's check the result. You see, slowed down. The code inside yellow condition runs. The last part of conditional statement is switch keyword. Else if statements are a great tool if we need to check multiple conditions. In programming, we often find ourselves needing to check multiple values and handling each of them differently. For example, check this code about grocery items, papaya. If grocery items is tomato, console.log tomatoes are $. And else if grocery items papaya, console.log papaya are this $. Else the invalid item will be printed. Here we have a series of conditions checking for a value that matches a grocery item variable. Our code worked fine, but imagine if we needed to check 100 different values. Having to write many else if statements sound like a pain. So a switch statement provides an alternative syntax that is easier to read and write. Let's convert this code to this one with switch case statement. The switch keyword initiates the statement and is followed by parentheses and a variable that each case will compare. In this example, the value or expression of the switch statement is a grocery item. So there is a switch, and inside parentheses we have a variable that has a value, and each of these values will be checked with the item in the case. Inside the code block, there are multiple cases. The case keyword checks if the expression matches the specified value that comes after it. The value following the first case is tomato. If the value of grocery item equal to tomato, the case inside the tomato will run. And don't forget to put break, because after running this code, if there is no break, this case will be evaluated too. But if you put a break, the whole statement functions finish and the code after the switch will run. What do you think about the result of this code? Papaya is the value of grocery item variable. So this code will run, and with break, the whole switch will finish. Let's check the result. Papaya are $. Let's review what we learned in conditional statements. Here are some of the major concepts of conditions. An if statement checks a condition and will execute a task if the condition evaluates to true. If-else statements make binary decisions and execute different code blocks based on a provided conditions. We can add more conditions using else-if statements. Comparison operators includes less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and not equal to can compare two values. The logical and operator and check if the both provided expression are true. The logical operator or checks if the either provided expression is true. The bang operators or not operators switches the truthness and falseness of a value. The ternary operator is shorthand to simplifying concise of if-else statements. Switch statements can be used to simplify the process of writing multiple else-if statements. The break keyword stops the remaining cases from being checked and executed in a switch statement. That's all about conditional statements. Let's do the exercises as followed for you and be ready for next Learn JavaScript parts in coding with Basir.